Rome's long shadow. From the 7 hills to eternity, from eternity to ashes. Greetings, travelers. You are here to listen to a 2,800-year-old story. Write the city you are in and the current time in the comments, because tonight together we will listen to the story of a civilization that laid most of the important foundations of the modern world, and then collapsed under its own weight. Close your eyes and drift into imagination. We are going to April 21st, 753 before Christ, the founding day of Rome. But when there was no such thing as Rome yet, when there were only 7 hills, Palatinus, Capitolinus, Quirinalis, Viminal, Esquilinus, Caelius, Aventinus, east of the Tiber River, a marshy land, and 2 brothers, Romulus and Remus. Legend said they were nursed by a wolf, but the truth was simpler. 2 shepherds, 2 poor young men, dug a trench with a plow. The smell of soil spread into the air. The earth was damp and rich, and he said, "This will be Rome." But at that time there was only 1 shepherd, 1 trench, and a dream. In his dream there was dry grass under his bare feet on that hill. The wind was blowing through his hair. The sun was beginning to set, and Romulus was standing there, holding a bloody stone in his hand, fear and determination in his eyes, looking down at the Tiber. Could he have seen that 1,000 years later this exact place would become the center of the world? Or was it only a hill he saw, unknown? But Rome had begun. Centuries passed, and Rome grew, from a tiny village to a town, from a town to a city, from monarchy to a solid republic. In 509 before Christ, Tarquinius Superbus, the last king, was overthrown and the republic was declared, Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and Roman people, and thanks to this, Rome was no longer just a military power, it became a political genius. 2 consuls continued to be elected every year, a balance of power was established, and the army began to organize. Legions of 5,000 men, heavy infantry. The short sword gladius was 22 centimeters long, double-edged and designed to penetrate the rib cage. The shield scutum was curved, wooden, leather covered with metal edges. There was a strategic tactic. The testudo, the tortoise formation, shields above, on the sides and in front, providing protection against arrows and spears. And Rome kept advancing south into Italy, against the Samnites, the Etruscans, the Greek colonies, and in 264 before Christ they encountered Carthage in Sicily. The Punic Wars began. The wars would last 118 years, exactly 3 wars, and in the second Hannibal arrived, the Carthaginian general was only 29 years old, but a genius. He brought 37 elephants, led them across the Alps. They said it was impossible, but he did it. And he stayed in Italy for 15 years, defeated Rome, and at Cannae, in 216 before Christ, it was Rome's greatest defeat in history. Between 50,000 and 70,000 Roman soldiers died. There was an army when the sun rose, and only corpses when it set. Afterward, Hannibal stood at the gates of Rome but did not enter. Why he could not enter is unknown, and historians still debate it. Perhaps he lacked siege equipment. Perhaps his soldiers were tired or exhausted. Perhaps it was a political calculation. But he could not enter in any way, and Rome began to breathe, recovered, and eventually counterattacked. Scipio Africanus, a young general about 25 years old, went to Carthage. Hannibal was recalled. The Battle of Zama took place in 202 before Christ. Hannibal was defeated for the first time. and Carthage was ending, but not completely. There was a third war, 149 to 146 before Christ, and this time Rome showed no mercy. Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed, and it was destroyed. The city burned completely. It burned for 17 days. 50,000 people were enslaved. They say the land was sown with salt, but that is probably not true. Salt was very expensive at the time, but the message was clear. This was the result of standing against Rome, and now Rome was the sole master of the Mediterranean, Mare Nostrum, our sea, they called it, and they continued eastward. Macedonia, Greece, Anatolia, Syria, Egypt, all fell one by one like dominoes, and in the first century, before Christ, Rome became the greatest power in the world. But there was a problem. Decay had begun from within. Wealth kept increasing, but inequality increased day by day. Senators lived in their villas while ordinary people lived in insula, 5 or 6-story wooden apartment buildings. Fire hazards that sometimes collapsed. Social tension rose. The Gracchus brothers demanded reform, land reform, and senators killed them with stones and clubs with their own hands in the streets. The Republic was devouring its own children, and generals were growing more powerful. Marius, Sulla, Pompeius, and then he came. Gaius Julius Caesar, born in 100, before Christ, aristocratic yet populist, intelligent, charismatic, and ruthless. He conquered Gaul in 8 years, destroyed 50 tribes, killed 1 million people, and enslaved 1 million. Increasing his wealth and power, the Senate was afraid. They said, "Return and dismiss your army." But in 49 before Christ, Caesar stood at the Rubicon River. Crossing with an army would bring civil war. Perhaps he thought for hours, and then he said, "Alea jacta est." The die is cast and crossed. Rome burned from within. Civil war began. Pompeius fled to Egypt and was killed there. Caesar won. He chose to become dictator. But the senators conspired on March 15th, 44 before Christ. During a Senate meeting, 23 senators rose, drew their daggers, and attacked Caesar. 23 stab wounds, chest, back, neck. There was no uninjured part left. And Caesar saw Brutus, his adopted son, and said, "Et tu, Brute, you too, Brutus," and collapsed, pulled his toga over his face, and his blood flowed across the Senate floor. And that day the Republic died, truly died, because Caesar's death did not save the Republic. It ended it completely. His nephew Octavian arrived. He was 18 years old, intelligent, cold, and calculating. He allied with Marcus Antonius and Lepidus. They formed a triumvirate, hunted all of Caesar's killers. Brutus committed suicide, Cassius committed suicide, and then the triumvirate dissolved. Antonius went to Egypt and fell in love with Cleopatra. Octavian declared war, the Battle of Actium in 31 before Christ. Antonius was defeated, fled to Egypt, and committed suicide there. Cleopatra followed him in death, said to be by snakebite, but perhaps poison. And Octavian stood alone. In 27 before Christ, he took the title Augustus, meaning exalted and sacred, and thus the Republic ended. The empire began. But this time masterfully, Augustus pretended it was still a republic. There were senators and consuls, but the real power was only his. He called himself Princeps. First citizen, he ruled for 41 years, brought peace, Pax Romana, Roman peace, which would last about 200 years, and Rome reached its peak in 117 after Christ during the reign of Trajan. The empire reached its greatest extent, 5 million square kilometers. From Spain to Iran, from Britain to Egypt, 60 million people, 21% of the world's population. Infrastructure was built. Roads, Via Appia, Via Flaminia, 80,000 kilometers of roads, canals, aqueducts like Pont-du-Gard and Segovia, bringing water from 100 kilometers away. Cities were founded, forums, temples, baths like the Baths of Caracalla with capacity for about 1,600 people. Hot water, cold water, warm water, massage, libraries. And the Colosseum was built, with capacity for 50,000 spectators. Gladiator fights, wild animal hunts, naval battles when flooded. Bread and circuses, panem et circenses. The happiness of the people was ensured, and they did not rebel. Roman culture spread completely. The Latin language, law, the 12 tables, Justinian's code, the foundation of modern law, philosophy of every kind, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Stoicism, architecture, arches, domes, concrete opus cementitium. The dome of the Pantheon still stands, 2,000 years later, diameter 43 meters, not a single crack. And Rome seemed eternal, but there were cracks, invisible yet always present. The borders were too vast to defend. Barbarian tribes pressed in, Germans, Goths, Huns, and inside the economy deteriorated. Inflation began. The value of money fell. Silver content dropped from 95% to 5%. Plagues came between 165 and 180. After Christ, the Antonine Plague killed 5 million people. Then, between 249 and 262 after Christ, the Plague of Cyprian. About 5,000 people died per day in Rome. Population declined, the economy collapsed. Discipline in the army weakened. Barbarians joined the army and loyalty became an issue. Emperors changed frequently, between 235 and 284 after Christ. 26 emperors in 50 years, an average of 2 years, most were killed. Assassinations, rebellions, and the empire was divided in 285. After Christ during Diocletian, east and west, the capital moved in 330 after Christ to Constantinople, present-day Istanbul, Eastern Rome, Byzantium. Religion changed. In 313 after Christ, the Edict of Milan, Christianity became legal. In 380 after Christ, Christianity became the official religion. Pagan temples were closed. Zeus, Jupiter, Mars were forgotten. A new god had arrived, and in 410 after Christ, Rome was shocked. For the first time in 800 years, it was sacked. The Visigoth king, Alaric, came, and the city was looted for 3 days. The city still stood, but the message was clear. Rome was no longer invincible. In 455 after Christ, the Vandals came and looted for 14 days, worse than before. And in 476 after Christ, the final blow was struck. Odoacer, a Germanic chieftain, deposed the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, forever. He was a 16-year-old child, and it ended. The Western Roman Empire ended forever that day. After 1,229 years, an empire that rose from a 7-hilled village to a world empire and then vanished. But had it truly vanished? No. The Eastern Roman Empire continued, lasting until 1453, known as Byzantium. Their culture continued: Latin, law, architecture. Rome would be reborn in the Renaissance, and even today the languages spoken come from Latin. English words are 60% Latin in origin, French 80%, Spanish 90%. Law systems, the idea of a republic, the word Senate, calendars, month names, Julius, Augustus, buildings, neoclassical architecture, the White House, Buckingham Palace, all copies of Rome. Armies studied legion tactics, roads, all roads lead to Rome, was not said in vain, because Rome never truly ended. It only changed shape. Its seeds were planted, now spread across the world. In every law book, every calendar, every concrete building, Rome still lives, still breathes, and perhaps this was the lesson. No empire is eternal, all rise and fall, but the traces they leave, ideas, systems, often live forever. And now here you are, in your bed. Wherever you are in the world, Rome's legacy surrounds you. The letters you read are Latin. The calendar you look at to learn history is Latin. Your justice is Latin. Your eyes are growing heavy, closing. Romulus still stands on that hill holding his plow. Caesar crosses the Rubicon. Augustus declares peace. The legions keep marching, barbarians come. Rome burns slowly over centuries, flames rising into the sky. And those flames are still visible even today, 2,000 years later. And perhaps that is why Rome's story is a sleep story. Because Rome once slept too. Fell into a long sleep, but its dream continues. Our civilization, our laws, our language. And now you are joining that dream. Your eyes fully closing, walking on Rome's roads, wandering its forums and good-night travelers. Wherever you are, Rome's shadow falls over you. A protective shadow. Sleep deeply, peacefully. Because empires fall, but stories always remain with us.